The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan, is one of the most hyped movies coming out this year. It's the definition of a prestige summer blockbuster. Hall of Fame director, all star cast, and a very well known source material. My name is Ian Villanueva, and this is Specks. This is actually going to be a prediction episode. I want to be very clear that I did enjoy the trailer, and I am really, really looking forward to this movie. I will definitely see it the first weekend, so I am very hyped. But I want to be clear that this episode is not about that at all. This is not whether I think the trailer was good or whether I think the movie is going to be good. This is actually a prediction of how the general critic audience and how the public audience will receive this movie based on expectations and based on what the trailer is conveying. So what I'm going to do here is predict the Rotten Tomatoes score that the critics will give and the audience will give, or not necessarily give, but what those scores will be in aggregate. So one thing is that Christopher Nolan is essentially a franchise. He's IP. He's basically a Marvel movie in and of himself. He's entered this rarefied air where, as a director, his name alone can bring a set of fans forward. So his movies excite people who actually like to think about film and watch YouTube videos on film. But his movies also excite the casual moviegoer, maybe someone who's not as plugged in, but has a general awareness of the film industry and what's going on in Hollywood. Even in the trailer, it just comes out and says, after the first scene or so, it says from Christopher Nolan. And the studios, they know that this is what will get people into the movies. He can be very adamant about what he does. He can control those things. And I think that while the movies aren't necessarily tied together, of course, other than when he did the Batman trilogy, there is an associated tone and there's sort of an expectation for how the movie's going to play, how it's going to pace, some of the time mechanisms that he uses, and just Nolan tools and tells. I think it's really, as a side note, funny that he made probably the greatest superhero or comic book movie, whatever you want to call it, of all time in The Dark Knight, which isn't a Marvel property, but when people think IP or franchise right now, I think the immediate thought is Marvel, even though they've been on kind of a decline. But he himself is, again, a franchise. It's a Nolan movie. You can say that the same way that you say it's a Marvel movie or it's a Star Wars movie. The Nolan Cinematic Universe, if you will. So that is going to generate some excitement. And not to say that he doesn't always have someone who's an A-lister, because obviously with such a big director, he's going to attract people who are also A-listers themselves. But this is a very star-studded cast. It's a certified list of A-list people. I remember even seeing a joke on social media maybe like a year ago around the time of the Oscars, and how someone said, oh yeah, no one's at the Oscars because everyone's over filming the Odyssey. I'm not even looking at anything, but off the top of my head, it's just people I can recognize. I mean, you have Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Tamaya, or Zentom. I don't know, but you have them together, both in the movie. And I think that that's going to be a major pull for people as well. And it's a big thing for the casual moviegoer. So I do feel that people will be coming out because they recognize at least one of the names, or, I mean, likely the people who are going to see someone in a movie would probably be able to recognize all the names, definitely more than the four that I've listed. But there are people who will definitely go because Matt Damon is in it, or because Anne Hathaway is in it, or because their favorite internet couple and Tom Holland and Zendaya are in it. I think that's a big signal for this. On top of all of that, or maybe underlying all of it, it's a known material. It's the Odyssey. I'm going to say right now that I do not plan to reread the Odyssey before I see this movie. I'm not going to try to do my research or anything. I'm just going to go watch the movie. I don't really have any interest in seeing the Odyssey, or reading the Odyssey, I should say. But even if you don't really know what the story is about, I think the last time that I've had any sort of meaningful interaction with the Odyssey was in high school, which is now over 20 years ago. It's obviously an old story, and the fact that he's adapting it and doing a movie, Nolan, that is doing this movie in the modern age, just signals this ambition. And that alone will intrigue people, even if they have no idea, like myself, what really the story entails or need a refresher on. Nolan does seem to love the idea of time, both from a content perspective. I mean, you think about the movies Tenet or Inception. Tenet obviously is a big story about time and time travel. And even Inception with the different layers of dreaming, and how when you're at one layer, it's, moving more slowly than the layer below it, or whatnot. But also just even as a storytelling mechanism, in Dunkirk, he has these parallel stories that are taking place over different lengths of time, but they all coalesce at the end together. So the Odyssey, I mean, you can tell by just the name, even if you know nothing about the story, evokes these conceptions of a long ass journey. So I wonder how that will play. I wonder how it's going to handle pacing. And the thing is, with pacing, that is going to certainly impact scores and audience scores, probably more so with audiences. Really quickly, too, I think with the trailer reaction, there's some general social media anxiety about historical accuracy. I think that some of his costumes get a little bit maybe fantastic, and people will call things out, which I've already heard happening. So there will be some anxiety around that. I mean, people always get, but it is a stylistic choice. I mean, this is just something he's probably doing to elicit some kind of a reaction, or just goes well with his art or the tone he's trying to use. I think that that's an important distinction about him, or that he's going to try to make. It is kind of ironic because when he made the Batman trilogy, everyone loved it because it was a superhero movie that was so grounded in realism. It felt like this could exist in our own world. And so it's like he's taking the Odyssey and something that people think should be realistic, even though there are elements of the story that are definitely not realistic, and he's kind of adding his twist to it. So we'll see how that lands. I think it'll land okay, but this isn't about what I think. Overall, the trailer feels very Nolan-ish. There's no doubt what the tone of this movie will be. I don't think it's going to vary much. And so we'll see how that lands with both the critics and the audience. I think with critics, when talented people, and particularly talented artists, make something, even if it's not their best work, there is a certain bar and there's a certain expectation. And I really think that's going to mean that there are going to be high expectations from the critics. Because more than the audience, the critics will try to shield themselves from the initial noise created by social media and buzz. And I think as a movie critic, they'll likely go into this really trying to assess and judge the movie on its own merits without thinking about expectations, as any good critic should. So I think there's going to be some high expectations for the critics. There's just a lot of talented people involved, and it should, so they'll probably have an expectation. For the audience, they see Nolan. It's an IMAX movie, which he loves to do. There's people in it that we see on Instagram and social media and in our lives in some capacity. And again, that's a callback to Tom Holland and Zendaya, or seeing Anne Hathaway in memes, Matt Damon, Lupita Nyong'o, who I didn't mention earlier. But I wonder if this story is going to be told in a really engaging way. I personally think Nolan will pull it off, but who knows if it'll end up dragging or if it's going to feel kind of pretentious. I mean, I've heard that from my own circles about some of his movies. So this also actually, though, will have high expectations from the audience. And I think that is the rub. I think that there are going to be very high expectations. There are going to be a subset of people who are going to go into it also super critically and want to be validated when they do that. I don't think there's going to be a very big percent of the population who's going to go in with very low expectations, but also be open minded in letting it blow them away. So, with that said, I think the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes will be at 78%, and I think the audience score will come in at around 83%. Generally, for Nolan's movies, the audience score does go a little bit higher than the critic score, so that wouldn't really be a surprise. And for something like this, you could see the audience just sort of liking how it was done and just loving it, generally walking away and walking out of the movie theaters pretty positively. I think that the star power and just the the spectacle of it all, it's going to just be something that people will like and overall just be a good time for audiences. I think the critics less so will again be pretty critical of this. I think that the expectations are very high for this movie, even though simultaneously they're kind of low. And to explain that, I mean, I think it's there's too many people associated with this, and it's such an ambitious story, and seems like it'll be good. It's like the perfect recipe, so it almost seems like people might turn away, or just like the expectations are so high that now people are starting to be skeptical of it. This could, of course, change. I mean, these are my predictions, so I suppose I think I'm right, but it could change. The movie comes out, something opposite from what is happening now, which is sort of this critical lens that people are applying, where they're thinking that it's not historically accurate or that this is going to just be a mess because there's just too many people and this is too big of a story. And so maybe when the movie comes out in that first week, something opposite happens where people are like, oh, this is actually great and this is an all timer. This is going to be like Nolan's masterpiece. Maybe that boosts the movie, and really influential people might just kind of put that bug in the general public's ears and even the critics' ears, even if it's subconscious. And the momentum could definitely shift, and then it'll just boost this movie to some all time scores. Again, I am very, very excited personally to see this movie. I think it will be good. I like all the people in it, I like all his stuff. But there it is. I think the critics come in at 78% and the audiences come in at 83%. And we will revisit this when the movie comes out.